that. The reality is SEO isn't dead, it's still there. CRO isn't dead, it's not going away. Personalization is a journey, it's not a kind of a thing that you just switch on like that. And yeah, I think it's kind of maybe people having more of a long-term view and calming down a bit. It's a good question. So I'm quite unusual because I don't come from a traditional technology background. I come from a sales background, and I started working for a testing platform called Global Maxer to sell the testing tool, and it became apparent it was easier to sell services rather than sell the technology. And this is before CRO was a thing. So we kind of came up with an audit methodology, and it turned out that a few other people had got a similar idea, and this is what became the CRO industry. So I sort of fell into the becoming a practitioner by accident, really. Well, there's a great phrase that Tim Ash uses. Tim Ash is the founder of Digital Growth Unleashed, and he says CRO is the art and science of web marketing joined together, and I think that's the key thing. It's you need good design, you need good assets, you need good creative to make things work. You can't work with assets that are suboptimal, but equally you kind of need the scientific approach, statistical analysis, kind of an analytical brain, and it's kind of thinking about design in a more analytical way and using data to inform your design process. And I kind of love that you can take a design to bits and kind of put values on pieces of the composition and then start putting it together in new and interesting ways that's better for the user. I think most of the stories I've got are kind of nightmare stories about working with, naming nobody, but working with difficult clients. Obviously it's great when you get results that are interesting, and we've got case studies where we've done things like, I've just done one recently, a 300% uplift on form fills for a business. I did another one a few years ago for a sorry, I have to stop there.
No worries.
Did another one a few years ago for a directory business, 500% increase in ads placed. So we've all got stories like that. But actually, it's more kind of the exciting thing is getting customers to think about a change of culture, and it's a different way of approaching design. And rather than it being, a legacy system where it's all led by brand or it's all led by opinion, to actually data becoming the real currency, and people speeding up their design process and dynamically changing their design based on what customers really want that they've observed from tests or from personalizations. I've been flogging this stuff, and as a sales guy I've been selling it for a long time, and I'd say maybe 7 years ago I couldn't get arrested. And in the digital space, we're always in competition with something that's sexier or, more modish or, kind of a new innovation. And maybe 3 years ago, people start talking about big data. What's that? At the moment, it is, what is it? Machine learning, AI, that's the bit. You're always going to be in competition with some new buzzy phrase. The reality is, I think it is growing and it's more mainstream. That most organizations, or certainly bigger ones, have an optimization manager. Some of them have optimization teams. We don't have to explain what we do anymore, which we used to. We used to go in and educate people. It's better when you educate the market. And it's a small space still. I think our responsibility as industry is let's grow a bigger pie. Let's get everybody doing optimization. And I think it's still growing, and but there's still plenty of scope for growth in this business. You're definitely getting more people thinking about the whole customer journey, and sort of CXO, customer experience optimization, being a thing across the whole journey, from awareness of a brand from maybe a different form of media to first engagement online, through to conversion, through to ongoing interaction with a customer through remarketing and etc. And CROs are part of that. I personally loathe the phrase CRO because conversion rate to me is one of the weaker metrics that you should be optimizing. We should be thinking about lifetime value. We should be thinking about retention, those kind of metrics. So I prefer to using the phrase optimization. But and this is where it kind of merges in with CRM and remarketing. In reality, I think most people are not there yet. But it's the whole industry's got to go in that direction. We've seen some of the speakers here at this conference talking about, for example, the value of repeat customers on the second purchase, third purchase, fourth purchase. The cost per acquisition's gone down hugely, and the value's gone up. So that's what we need to do, thinking about optimizing over the longer term. Yeah, well, I think the big one is it's acknowledging it's a culture shift. It's not a kind of, you can't flick a switch and suddenly become optimized. It's a mindset change at the senior level. So that's why I talk about you need a senior sponsor on board to do this stuff properly. You need to kind of embrace the fact that, you're going to be doing, you're going to be managing your design assets in real time or close to real time based on customer information. And if people still don't get the fundamentals right, you still got organisations where there are local power bases, and not all teams are equal. So maybe the acquisition team has more influence than the merchandising team, or maybe the paid search team has more influence than a social team, whatever it happens to be. You need a structure which is kind of flat, and you need a very strong senior sponsor on the board that's going to kind of run this whole process. And I think that's the big thing, is people don't recognise it's not really a set of tools, it's a whole mindset change. I think there's a kind of general sort of short-termism and, sort of one-upmanship on a really kind of short, on a kind of short-scale basis with, people sort of jumping on a bandwagon for a topic or an idea for a very short space of time. And I think so. And it's just part and parcel of the way that the world is now, with Twitter and LinkedIn and other kind of social media platforms. People kind of leap on something, and there's a huge amount of debate in a small period of time, rather than people taking the long-term view. And things, people just want to be controversial for the sake of it. I kind of get that. The reality is SEO isn't dead; it's still there. CRO isn't dead; it's not going away. Personalization is a journey. It's not a kind of a thing that you just switch on like that. And I think it's kind of maybe people having more of a long-term view and calming down a bit. Well, I mean, the first thing is some kind of audit and some sort of benchmarking thing. So, the first thing is from an analytics point of view, having an analytics health check, making sure that if you're using Google or Adobe, it's recording the right events and they're recording right. Most people who do this would say, they kind of go and do an analytics audit, and they usually find loads of stuff that's wrong. So you're probably reporting on wrong numbers, so get that fixed. Start getting quant feedback. So there needs to be some sort of audit phase where, you use tools like session recordings or heat maps or scroll mapping software or user recordings, user surveys and so on, where you kind of get real user feedback. The big gap I think that most people have is in the strategy phase. It's that turning that stuff into actionable insight that they can really act upon, and organising things into things that they don't really need to test, and things that are kind of maybe a bit more controversial that they do need to test. Writing proper hypotheses and organising them properly so that you can act upon it. A lot of people kind of struggle with this midsection. Anybody can start testing straight away, but actually, whether they're going to get good results out of randomly tested stuff is debatable. At the same time, having said that, I'm not sitting on the fence. I do think there is a place for a sort of experimental workflow. So, as well as these bigger tests with data-led changes, it's always nice to have a workflow going where there's just simpler stuff that's good to get going. So things like, testing different price points, testing different kinds of anchoring on certain elements. This stuff doesn't take very long to do. It's not going to transform your business, but it might be nice to know. So there's still a place for that.